Jesus was not a bully to sinners. He spoke the truth in love. He dealt with bullies because back then the religious people were the bullies. And that is a quote from my guest, Isaac Mitchell, also known as Just Isaac or J.I. He is the former Canadian amateur boxing champion. He made a comeback to the sport. And we are going to talk about boxing, bullying, and his spiritual journey. Just Isaac, welcome to 100 Huntley Street.
Thank you very much.
So let's go back. You're a child growing up in New York. What was life like for you there?
Well, growing up in a poverty-stricken area, an area where, is a lot of things happen in the heart of the ghetto. And it's a whole different lifestyle than most places that you find within Canada or, suburban places. The place that I grew up is, I'm a kid from the projects.
And you were learning how to use a gun at the age of 11?
Yeah. Well, there's a story behind that. There was some activity that took place, and I don't want to incriminate anybody.
No, okay.
But the reality was I was handed a gun at 11 years old, and that was the first time that I ever been involved with criminal activity without even knowing it at that time.
I mean, that was your environment.
Yeah, it's just in my innocence. It was in my innocence. I took the gun, and I remember the weight of the gun and what it felt like in my hand. I said, this is real, and so that was the start, I think, of being exposed to, a life that, of crime. And
Did you feel like that gave you some power?
to be honest with you, I was 11 years old. So being a young child, it was actually kind of shocking. I didn't really feel power. I felt scared,
Yeah.
And I took the gun and I hid it, to be honest, And from that point on, I got involved, and I didn't really have. I never went to church then. I was never in the sanctuary. Never, I heard about God. My mom read the Bible to me at a very young age. And she told me about Jesus, but to actually have a relationship with him, that didn't happen till years later.
Your parents were lovers of music, and that's something that you took as well.
Yes. My dad was he was the lead singer in a band called New World Productions. My mother had a record deal from a major record label as well. So I've always been around music, and I've always been around fighting. Standing at the bus stop, you see a fight every other day. And I remember even being in school at one time, this is actually in the book as well that I wrote about social justice, that I remember there was a time that I was in school and these guys had said to me, "We want your money." They saw me in the bathroom and I said, I really don't have that. So I remember what it felt like when they said after school, "You're gonna get it." And rumor had it that these dudes had knives and everything, right? Someone was holding guns. And I remember when I got out of school, what it felt like, and it was five of them.
How old were you then?
That jumped me. I was probably like 14, 13, 14. 5 of them jumped me. And I go into details in the book of what happened. It wasn't nice. And then somebody else got involved. This is all in there. And I see now that even when I was outside of the church, bullying exists. And even having experienced at times, not to bash the church, because I know that God loves His church, but bullying can take place within the sanctuary as well. I remember there was a time period where I had strayed away from God. And I remember what it was like, how people looked down on me because I strayed away from God. And I remember what it felt like to be rejected, fighting to get back to where God wanted me to be.
Why did you go into boxing? Was it because you love the sport and you're watching, the great fighters on television, or was it for survival?
I think it was an accumulation of things. I've watched fighting on TV. The whole family used to watch boxing on television, and my dad's definitely, he loves boxing for many years. But I think that it was when, I saw a little bit of hope with boxing, because I figured that, you know what, if I can learn how to fight and I can defend myself, that's my weapon. That's my money in the pocket, you know. And I started training, and nobody really took it serious, to be honest. I was always laughed at. Even my teacher, see, this is all in the book as well. My teacher looked at me, he said, "So what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be?" And everyone gave the answer. They said, "I want to be a fireman, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor." I said, "I want to be a champion boxer."
And they laughed at you.
They laughed at me, and the teacher looked at me right in the eyes and said, "It will never happen."
Okay, we're going to take a break. It did happen. And now you've got a passion for helping those that are being bullied. And we're also going to talk about your relationship with Jesus and how that fits in with boxing when we come back on 100 Huntley Street. Former Canadian amateur boxing champion Just Isaac, J.I., as he likes to be known. Before we went to the break, we're talking, about the bullying and some of the things happening in your life.
Right.
But along the way, you came into a relationship with Jesus, but it was even years before, as a young child playing video games, that you had this curiosity about God. Why was that, do you think?
Man, I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I just started thinking to myself, I was like, wait a minute, why am I here? Who is this person that's called God? And where did he come from? Who made him? And I started asking all these questions, and eventually I heard the voice of God. I know that now that I'm a man. When I was a child, I heard the voice of God call me, and I went. I walked to the church myself at 7 years old. Yeah, and I sat there, and the church was closed actually at the time, and there was just one guy doing some cleaning on the side. And I was sitting there, and I was like, who are you? And what do you want with me? And I felt, I know it now what it is the glory of God invade my life.
So as a 7-year-old, that's, you're trying to comprehend that. Your life goes on, you've talked about the bullying and you getting beat up and, some of the things that happen, some things I know that you wish didn't happen in your life. But you had this God consciousness at this point.
Yes.
When did it all sort of come together for you where you said, I believe in Jesus and I want to have a relationship with him? I
would say my grace when I eat my food or whatever, but actually really having a relationship with Jesus, I got to a place in life where I began to realize the reality of the systems that have been set up for my fall. And I got scared. I said, man, this is not smart. To live in a way that's abusive to my body, that's not good to people that are around me. And I began to, this was years ago. I began to just talk to God as a friend. I wasn't a church going person. I just started talking to God. To be honest with you, I had a difficult time with church people. And when I mean by church people, I'm not talking about a believer in Jesus.
Yeah, I'm religious.
I just...
You wanted the relationship part of it.
That's right.
So when you were going through all these things, activities and, living in somewhat destructive way at times, but you had this encounter with God, was that kind of always there, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be doing this?
Absolutely. God speaks to the conscious. I'm telling you like this, is that straight up is Jesus, like God being in my life now, the Lord being in my life, he has changed my life so much. The way that I thought before, I would size people up. I would look at somebody, I'd be like, I bet you I can knock that person out. This is the way that I thought, because I'm a fighter, right? So I would think, I knocked this person. I know I knocked this person out, and that's my mindset. And but eventually, what ended up happening was when God moved in on my life, I began to see people differently. I started looking at people saying, man, I bet you I can help that person. I bet you I could do something to bring that person to another level in their life.
Tell me about mobile boxing. because it's something that you have a great passion for.
Yes, sir.
And you want to help people, to empower them because they're going through hard times, when especially when it comes to bullying and some of those things.
Yes, yes. Well, with mobile boxing, we have a program within the boxing program. To be honest with you, boxing is important, but what's more important is people for me.
So boxing is the platform, though.
That's it. That's it. And I feel very blessed and very honored to have an opportunity to connect with people and to help to maximize their potential, as individuals and who they are, and to unravel the things that are bound up within them. There are people who come to me in my classes, they're broken, but by the time they train, and it's just, you can see the transition that takes place, the work that God is doing.
Well, what would you say to somebody that's watching and saying, yeah, but that's you, I've got these hurts, but I don't think there's much hope? What would you say to them?
A lot of people, at least the people that I've come in contact with, are hurting because people have spoken lies into their lives, or they have a misinterpretation of who God is and how God sees us. So I want to tell somebody, if they're listening, to know that God's love is not predicated on our performance. He loves us just because he loves us. Yeah. He loves us just because he loves us. That's it. And I'm just so thankful for the grace of God, because and I believe that if God can forgive me, he can forgive anybody.
Well, great words there. Well, thank you very much, Just Isaac. You're not only a boxing champion, you're a champion as a person. And we're glad that you live in Canada, and I know you're back and forth to the U.S., and your story is powerful, and we need to remember that. So thank you for sharing your story. And if you want more information about Just Isaac and what he's doing, it's on the T-shirt.
Yes.
Mobileboxing.ca.
Yes.
And what is it? It's fear is only a thought.
Fear is only a thought.
Yeah, isn't that true?
Yes.
Again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We're adding new and powerful stories every day, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe and stay up to date with our latest content.